Hello, welcome. My name is Greg Goodman. I'm here with Dr. Daniel Wendler, and we are today going to talk about Google Ads. So, Google Ads is the fastest way to grow your practice. It's the fastest way to fill your caseload with ease and flow, but it requires some foundational work, right? So, before you just drop money and donate money to Google Ads, you want to actually take some time to build a foundation, right? To do that dream client, to do the niche work, to do all of the things that are required to really understand who is it you most want to serve? Who is it that you want to see week after week in that chair, whether that chair is virtual or whether that's an actual couch or a chair sitting in front of you in your office, right? And to do that, you build the foundation. You build the foundation. You speak to your dream client. You use a dream client dictionary. You use their words. You understand who you most want to serve. Then you build a website around them. You build a website that speaks to your dream client, that is designed to connect with your dream client, to create a personal connection. Then you create what's called a landing page. And a landing page gives them plenty of ways to reach out and to become a paying client. And then when you do all of that, that is the time to turn on Google Ads. And we're going to talk a lot about it. I talk to a lot of therapists who say, "Oh, I did Google Ads and it didn't work, so I'm never doing Google Ads again." And the reality is, it's like, well, we start to talk like, "Oh, I spent a couple $100 and I did it myself." It's like, well, no disrespect, but that's why the Google Ads didn't work, is it's a lot more than just turning on Google Ads and waiting for clients to come in. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Right. So Daniel is the founder of marketingfortherapists.org. In addition to being a wonderful human being and someone who was a Google Ads consultant long before he actually got his degree and became a licensed therapist, a clinical psychologist, he was in the world of Google Ads. And that's wonderful because that means, Daniel, you've got your foot in both worlds, right? You've got the tech background, you've got the consulting background, you really understand how Google Ads works. And you also speak therapist. As a therapist, as Dr. Daniel Wendler, you are a practicing therapist who also since 2015 has been helping therapists with marketing. So it's this wonderful fusion of worlds. And I'm just so excited for how you're going to help everybody watching this today to just sort of understand, how does one do Google Ads? How does one use the dream client and the niche and all the foundation work that I help people do to create successful landing pages and successful Google ad campaigns, and what is the secret formula for success? So that's what we're going to talk about today. So I guess I just love to, just before we jump into nitty gritty, Daniel, I did a little bit of introduction, but what lights you up when it comes to this? Like, how did you get started in the world of marketing for therapists?
Yeah, it's a great question, Greg. So I before I became a psychologist, I worked for an online, advertising agency. I was literally selling dog food. I was working for an online pet supply retailer, and I woke up one day and I realized this is not what I want to do with my life. And then as I thought about my passions, I decided, the field of psychology, being a therapist, helping people, that's really where I'm going to be able to make the biggest impact. So I enrolled in a doctoral program for clinical psychology. But then when I was there, I was talking to a lot of other students. I was talking to people who had graduated the program and who were in private practice, and they just had so much stress about the marketing side of running their own practice. Like, these were people who were amazing therapists, could do just incredible work with a client, but were like, how am I supposed to find people who are going to be able to come in and benefit from what I have to offer? And so I'm like, you know what? Like, I feel like I could take the skills that I have, and if I can kind of be a multiplier, if I can help somebody who's a great therapist do more therapy, reach more clients, then more people benefit and are helped by that. And so it's been a really cool opportunity to have my marketing for therapists agency as a way to let therapists kind of reach more clients, help more people, and kind of as like a way to sort of benefit my colleagues in the field. We have a huge mental health crisis in this country, right? And so to be able to reach more people, make sure more people are getting the care that they need, and therapists have the ability to not be worried about how they're going to fill their caseload or how they're going to make rent on their office this month. Like that stuff's really rewarding, so that they can just focus on doing good work for their clients.
Beautiful, yeah. And you said something that I hear all the time too, and it's this concept of there you are in grad school, this experience that's supposed to teach you everything you need to have a thriving practice to make the ripples and tidal waves of change and good in the world. And it sounds like that this was your experience too, that there was just this mythical marketing 101 class that isn't really there, and people there was just left to figure it all out.
No, we had one class. Like I thought I had a great program, but like, we had like a great program in general, but we had one class on like the business of running a private practice, and it had like hadn't been updated in like 20 years. It was like, oh, like here's how like get your practice in the phone book. Here's what you should put on
Right.
your business card when you hand it out to people. It's like nobody markets themselves that way anymore. But there was not any information about how to market yourself in the world that we live in now.
Right. Well, I'm grateful that you're here today to shed some light onto how does one market, how does one have success in Google Ads. And I also just want to ping pong it back to you. And I shared a little bit a couple minutes ago about how my belief in the world of therapist marketing is that the fastest, most effective way to fill your caseload is, again, to do the foundation, have a dream client and niche, to create the website around them with effective landing pages, and then turn on Google Ads.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious, like, how does that help you as someone who is a Google Ads specialist who's been doing this professionally for years? Like, how do you see the difference of a website that has that foundational work done, that has that clarity, versus a website that does not, or a therapist or a practice, or however you want to share it?
Yeah. No, like it's absolutely critical, because I mean, like a therapist is somebody that in many cases, like, you are trusting maybe with stuff that you've never told anybody else. You might be going to a therapist in a place of significant crisis, significant distress. Like, if this therapist isn't right for you, then you've like you really lose out on that, right? Because you might most people, they go to therapy for months and they really trust their therapist, and if that doesn't work, if the therapist isn't able to help you with what you need, or they're not a fit for you, then that's really damaging to the client. And so clients are sensitive to that sort of thing. They want a therapist that is able to demonstrate their expertise, that is able to demonstrate their empathy, so that they understand what the client is going through. And if your website is just this basic thing that says, hey, I'm a therapist, and in my free time I like walking my dog, then how is somebody supposed to make that decision? It's kind of like trying to make a decision on if you were going to marry somebody or not, just looking at their Tinder profile. Like, there's just not that much information out there, right? And for an important decision like that, like, people are going to be very hesitant. And so if your website is not set up in a way that really speaks to the need of the client that you want to work with, then that client's going to look at your website. They're going to have no idea that you are a good fit for them. And the entire internet is just a back button away. And so it's going to be very easy for them to hit the back button and go look at some other therapist website, and then sign up for somebody else that does offer content that shows the expertise, empathy, understanding, etc.
I really like that phrase you just used. The whole internet is just a back button away. I like it's very it's artistic. It's clear too. Plus, it's an alliteration. Lots of good things going on there. I mean, and this is so important too, because Google Ads are not necessarily cheap, right? Like, I'm curious, on average, what are you seeing across your clients, like an average, like, cost per lead? And by cost per lead, for anybody who's watching who doesn't know all the terminology, right, for somebody who even just sorry, not even cost per lead, cost per click, right? You're
Mhm.
paying for everybody who clicks on your ad. So I'm curious, like, what are you seeing for people who click on your ad? And then the other metric that is cost per lead, cost per conversion, like, how much for someone, right? Because there's a difference between someone going to your website and then someone actually reaching out from your website.
Mhm.
I'm curious what you're seeing.
100%. And I'll give these numbers with the caveat that these are the numbers that I typically see with folks that I work with. But if somebody, and we'll probably talk about this more later on, but if somebody sets up their own ad campaign, the fact is that Google is not your friend. Google wants your money. And so it's very easy, if you don't know what you're doing, to have it be set up in such a way where Google really overcharges you or really gets you results that are not good. But if it's set up correctly, if you're having decent results, usually you're still paying $3 to $4 per click. And so, if you want 100 people to visit your website, it's $350, call it, that you're going to have to spend for that.
Right.
And then, like of those people, like if you're getting, again, the kinds of typical results that I see, obviously this is, this is a range, it's an average, et cetera. But like, $150 per lead tends to be kind of in that middle zone. But, the numbers, change quite a bit, right? Like if your website is half as effective and therefore your cost per lead drops from 150 to 300, or rather increases in that direction, then suddenly your profit margin on your ads just gets cut in half. And you can't make that up on volume, right? Because you're paying the same amount for every single click. And so if your margin is low, then your margin is low. So the website is one of the most critical pieces in your ads being successful. Because again, like for something else, like maybe you go viral on TikTok and 1 million people come to your site, even if only a few of them happen to sign up with you, you didn't pay anything for that, so it doesn't matter. But with your ads, because you're paying every single click, the margin, the percentage that actually convert is huge.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned too, right, that the numbers that you're talking about, like to be clear, this is what Daniel gets as someone who lives, breathes, eats, sleeps, exists in the world of Google Ads and does it professionally. Like those are, three to $4. And then of course, if you're in a big city, if you're in New York or in LA or San Francisco, numbers go up too. But like those are just benchmarks. Like those are things to reach for, to strive for. And I talk to so many people who are just coming in who are like, I spent $1,000 on Google Ads and got nothing, which I hear all the time. And it's all over the place. And that is so also about the dream client and the niche concept. I'm curious too, like how do you use the foundational work that somebody else has done and incorporate that into the ad itself, right? Like, do you pull some of that dream client in there? Like, do you use some of the verbiage? Like, how does that clarity actually help you to create better ads?
Yeah. Well, I think, my philosophy is that you want to always be keeping the focus on the client and what the client wants and what the client needs. And so anything that you're including, you want to sort of ask the question of like, how is this going to offer value to this particular client? And so, however, if somebody has done that work of kind of identifying, these niches, it's probably not just niches where like it's just fun for them. It's probably niches where like they have something special to offer. Maybe they have a particular kind of training. Maybe they have a lived experience. Maybe they have 10 years of seeing this kind of client. Maybe they have a therapeutic style that really fits well with whatever is they're trying to work with. And so if I kind of look at the content that's on the site and see some of these specific value propositions where it's like, oh, like this person, like they have specialty training in this, or oh, this person has this approach that like is really unique, and for a particular kind of client they might really like this kind of approach, then I'm going to try to weave that into the ads and sort of say, hey, like this is something that's not generic. This is something that's specific about the therapist that I'm working for, and that's going to get somebody to click that ad and then come to the site. And then the goal is that it feels kind of like a seamless transition, so that the ad and then the content on the page are both like two pages in the same book, where like the language kind of feels similar, the voice feels similar, and then the story that you're being told of like why this is really suitable for you, why this is a special opportunity for you as the client, it's just a continuation from one to the other.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and the continuity between the ad and the landing page is so important. So, with that said, Daniel, I'm super duper grateful for you. You've prepared a bit of a presentation about this concept. We've talked about it a few times. Landing pages, the basically where they wind up on your website, on your therapist website, after they click on that Google ad. So I'm going to just sort of sit back, and I think we're all going to learn something together. And I'm going to pull up your slideshow, Daniel, and go for it.
All right.
I'm excited to learn.
Yeah, so I'll jump in and I'll talk about landing pages. And again, because you might be like, well, okay, but what do you mean by landing page? And it's pretty straightforward. It's just a landing page is just a page on your site that you've designated to be the place that your marketing is going to send somebody. And so with our ads, it's very easy because for each ad, we can pick what URL on your site we want to send that to. But you could also use it for other forms of marketing, right? Like if you're going to write a Facebook post or something, you could have a specific page on the site that Facebook post sends people to. So it's just any page on your site that the thought process is, this page is going to be somebody's first impression of my site. They are going to come here directly from somewhere else. And so I want to make sure that I'm effective in both like grabbing their attention, even though they don't know anything about me, and also making sure that whatever they're seeing on this landing page is relevant to whatever they were thinking, whatever they were looking at before they clicked on that link. Again, that idea of continuity. If you have an ad that's all about trauma therapy, and then you land them on a landing page that just talks about everything you do, it's a continuity break. You're going to lose people. So let's kind of dive in and explain a little bit more what I mean by this, or how we can work on this. So first of all, like, why do you need this idea of a landing page? Like, why not just land everybody on your homepage? Like that'd be easier, right? And so there's three main reasons. The first one is, again, this idea that the whole internet is a back button away. Every other therapist in your town is in the same search results that they found you in. And so it is very, very easy for somebody to get pulled away. Even more so nowadays, when you're not just competing with other therapists, but like they're getting a notification on social media, they've got a TikTok playlist they want to watch, whatever. You have to really earn their attention. And the way that you do that is by immediately showing them something that is relevant to what they're looking for. And because you can't possibly have something relevant for every single thing on every single page of your site, you got to have specific pages for the different topics. So if somebody's looking for anxiety therapy, you got one page for them. Somebody's looking for couples therapy, you got another page for them. And that allows you to earn the person's attention. A specific landing page also allows you to demonstrate your expertise, because you're able to spend some time talking about whatever it is that the person is looking for, whether it's trauma therapy, whether it's, play therapy for kids. You're able to describe the service in a way where the client can read it and be like, oh yeah, like, you know what you're talking about. Like you are an expert that I can trust. Like you both understand my condition and you have tools that I think could help me. And that is going to go a huge way into getting them to sign up with you rather than somebody else. Also, a landing page allows you to be intentional about sort of creating this pathway that ends in a call to action. And a call to action is just where you deliberately tell somebody to take some kind of action, which in the case of a therapist is going to be contact me. Like, let's get you set up for your first session, whether that's just contact me in general, whether that's sign up for a free consultation. You want somebody to get off of browsing your site and into your address book, so to speak, so that you can reach out to them. And so a landing page is the best way to do that. But then, this is not just to talk about making landing pages. This is a talk about making effective landing pages. So how do we set up those landing pages in a way that works well? Well, the biggest thing that goes into a good landing page is your content. You could have the most beautiful landing page in the world, but if the writing on it is no good, then what's the point? And so you want to write content on your landing page that is effective. And part of what goes into writing good content is just the same as what goes into writing any kind of good writing. And so it's a good idea to ask somebody else to read what you've written, get feedback on it, try to edit it, etc. But there's three specific ingredients that I think are really essential for therapist landing pages. The nice thing about these three ingredients is that they also kind of offer a little framework that you can follow to kind of get yourself out of writer's block. Because what I often see therapists do is they're like, I don't know what to write here. And so they just like write a page of facts. Like they're like, oh yeah, like EMDR was invented in this year by this person. And like it reads like a Wikipedia article. And again, it's fine if you want to write a Wikipedia article, but this is marketing content. The goal is to get somebody to sign up with you. And so if it's not written with that goal in mind, you're going to lose people. So what are the three ingredients? What is the format that I recommend? Well, first, you want to start by showing understanding. Like the person who has searched for therapy on anxiety, like that is a person who has anxiety probably. And so you want to show that you understand what it is like to have anxiety. Like you want to show that you understand their condition, you can have empathy for them, like that you want like an initial paragraph or an initial section where that person feels, okay, yeah, you get me. Like you can see what's going on in me. And then your second section is where you want to offer hope. You want to say, hey, like you have anxiety, you have depression, you have trauma, you have a problem in your romantic relationship, whatever it is, but it doesn't have to stay that way. And you sort of talk about how therapy can really address whatever the pain point is that they came to your site looking for, how therapy can really be effective for those things, and how you can see, like if you have anxiety, well, you might feel this way. If you have problems in your relationship, you might be able to build better communication, et cetera. So you sort of offer the hope of therapy. But you don't want somebody to read that and say, okay, that's great, I'm going to go to Psychology Today and find another therapist to do it with. You want them to choose you. So then the ending of your content is where you sell yourself. And this can be hard for therapists. I know we tend to be pretty humble people, but it helps, it only helps your client. Like if you really are the right person to help this client, it helps the client for you to communicate that. So you want to use the opportunity to toot your own horn a little bit and just end with a closing where you say, why should you choose me specifically for this? Whether that's because I have, specific training or expertise, whether it's because I have a specific therapeutic style that I think a client might like, whether it's, some other reason, you want to say, hey, like you should pick me and here's why. And then you want to end with a call to action, which we'll talk a little bit more about. I guess in not this slide, but the next one. So the thing though is that your content is pretty critical, but if you have good content but a terrible visual design, then people aren't going to read your content, right? And so it's important to also make sure that it looks good, and that doesn't mean that you have to hire some amazing artist to make it all beautiful. Although having a professional look at your site can be helpful, but there's a few simple things that you can do that are going to improve it. The first one is realize that images are your friend. Even just having one image on a page, so it's not just all text, can really go a long way. And this might be an image of you, this might be an image of your office, or there's a lot of free websites that you can get a picture of a river, you can get a picture of a guy on a mountaintop. It's a little cheesy, it's a little stock photography, but it's better than nothing. And if you don't want to spend the money to hire a professional to make it custom for you, better than nothing goes quite a long way. The thing you do want to be careful about with images is that you want them to be the seasoning, not the main course. And what I mean by that is that sometimes people get some image of like a river or something, and they make it so big that that's the only thing you can see when you first load the page. And that's no good, because they don't want to look at a picture of a river. They want to like read about what you have to offer. So it's important to like make sure that your image is sized so that they can still see your text when they first load the page. It's also important to avoid the trap of the wall of text. And we've all seen this on the internet. It's just one long stream of consciousness where there's no line breaks. There's maybe not even paragraph breaks. Nobody wants to read that. So add lots of white space. Every make short paragraphs and then add a line break after every paragraph, because that makes it very accessible and desirable to read. And then recognize that people are going to skim your content. That's just how people exist on the internet, and that's okay. But you want to try to set it up so that they can still get the meaning even though they skim. And one of the easiest ways to accomplish that is through subheaders. Like, make a little bold heading and then, communicate the core idea of whatever is going to come next. So if you want to communicate to somebody that there's hope for depression, like have a subheading that is like, you can feel better. So that again, even if they skim, they're getting the core idea, and it helps you visually not just look like a wall of text. It helps it feel more approachable for them. So let's say you've written good content with this style. You've made a visual design where you've got an image, you have some white space, you have some subheaders. Well, now you got to end with a call to action, because I've seen people that make awesome landing pages where they do all these things and then they just stop. like, and it's like, well, what is the client supposed to do now? So you want to really use that call to action. And one of the major ingredients of a call to action is that you want it to be big and obvious. If possible, you want it to be a button, like a big old button that they can just click on. That's very easy. It's very inviting. Or maybe a content form or a contact form that just exists right there on the page so they can fill it out immediately. Sometimes people have call to action that are like, it's just a hyperlink or it's in small font or something like that. Don't do that. Make it really big and obvious. The other thing is to remove all friction. And what I mean by that is you want to make it as easy and as simple as possible for somebody to reach out to you. So if you don't have to ask for a piece of information initially, don't do it. Like, you don't need somebody to fill out their insurance information when they first contact you. You can do that after you've booked them for their intake. You don't need somebody to like add their mailing address or things like that. Like, make it really, really streamlined, just the minimum possible, so it's very easy for them to contact you. And then finally, try to give something free if you can. One of the most effective ways to boost your conversion rate is to offer a free consultation, because people love free stuff. And also because picking a therapist is such a personal decision, if you can talk to a therapist for 15, 20 minutes before making that decision, you're much more likely to say, okay, I feel good about this person. They understand me. And so obviously, that 15, 20 minutes is time you're not getting paid for. But what I recommend to people is that when your caseload is low, offer a free consultation as part of your call to action. And then once you start to fill up, just remove that from the website, so that you're balancing it out, where when you've got a little bit more free time, then you offer that to improve your conversion rate. So a little bit of a whirlwind, but those are the core techniques. If you want to, if you've got further follow-up questions, you want to stay connected, marketingfortherapists.org, is my website. You can shoot a contact. We have a lot of calls to action on that site, as you might imagine. And so you can shoot an email there if you've got any follow-up questions, or if you want to copy these slides, whatever.
Awesome. Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate all of that. I'm looking for the button to take the slide away and have us go back to the two of us. There it is.
Okay.
Technology.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's everything you said is in such alignment too with the way that I work with therapists and design websites. And I appreciate the sort of on my own, for myself, like this affirmation of a lot of the the principles that I've been teaching too. It's the walls of text, like nobody wants to read them. That's the fastest way to what is it? What did you say, to use your browser's back button to go find the rest of the internet is. And the other curiosity I had is, I always suggest to people, I was like, you cannot have too many calls to action as long as they're tastefully in there, right? Like, you don't want your landing page to become a gigantic, neon sign pointing somewhere. But at the same, I like to say contact form, button, free consult, chat, contact form on every page, any other best practice ideas that come up. But that is how, right? Everything you shared, that is how you have a successful Google Ads campaign. That's how you get the numbers that you were talking about earlier, of the, how much you're going to be paying for people, for leads, for clients. Because it's not just about how much you're paying per click. It's not even how much you're paying per person who reaches out. It's, are the right people reaching out, and then how many of those actually become a paying client. So I'm curious, talking about this concept of how much things cost, like, how does one set a Google Ads budget? Like, do you have any tips or best practices on that?
Yeah. Well, so, again, Google is happy to take as much money as you want to give it. And so I think that a lot of it kind of comes down to, like, what are your business goals? And so I think that being able to kind of base it off of, okay, well, how many clients am I hoping to get from Google in a month? And then let me try to work backwards from that with either, that 150 baseline, if you think you can get that, or whatever the true number is for your practice. You want to try to, like, obviously everybody would like to have their caseload be completely full within 1 month of running their ads. But that's expensive. And sometimes with Google, the more that you spend, the more that your performance can deteriorate in terms of your cost per lead, because you've sort of already gotten the cheapest, easiest conversions, and then you're going after the stuff that's maybe lower quality. So it's not as simple as just dumping a huge geyser of money into it. But what I typically recommend that people do is they think about, well, what is, for my starting point, what is the number of clients that would feel meaningful for me? Like if I could get one extra client a month, would that feel meaningful? If I could get one extra client a week, would I need to get one client a day? Like what would actually be meaningful for me? And then go back and then again, calculate that out based on, all right, this is the number of clients I want in a month. What do I need to spend per month? And then they can, you can sort of decide for yourself with the budget, with what I have allocated, is this reasonable? Can I put this in? And if so, then that's the plan that you do. And if not, then you got to think maybe a little bit more about, well, what actually are my goals, or how much am I willing to commit to marketing, or things of that nature.
Yeah. And I also find too that there's this, when I talk to people about Google Ads, there's this abstract concept of how do I set a marketing budget? I don't know. I tell people like, okay, $500, $1,000 Google ad budget a month, and it seems impossible and unfathomable. But then there's this, okay, let's, using your numbers, about $150 per lead. Let's say that people are turning 50%, which is a good number of leads, into new clients. So you're paying about $300 for a new client. But if you're charging $200 a session and your average client stays with you for 10 sessions, right, all that's $2,000 in income. Now, of course, it's not as simple as, well, then your ad budget is $1,700 per client. Like, these are the types of questions that I sort of encourage people to start thinking about when it comes to Google Ads budget. Where do these numbers come from? What is the lifetime income of a new client, and then how does that translate to where you're going? Like, what is realistic though? Like, when someone's getting started, can they expect 2-4 new clients? I know, of course, it comes down to money, but like, what would a realistic starting point be for someone who's like, hey, I need new clients?
Yeah. So what I typically, for people that are just kind of starting out, what I typically recommend for them is that they plan to spend maybe $300 to $400, per month, and they plan to run that maybe for 2 months. And like, because with that 300 to 400, you're going to be getting at least like 100 clicks a month. Again, assuming that you have relatively average stuff. And it's not like that is statistically significant in the sense that you could go publish a paper on it in a science journal or something. But like 100 clicks is a reasonable enough number that it's going to give you a decent sense of, is this working or not? And what I find is that often, if it is working, you're going to notice that in that first month. Like, you're going to be like, oh, like I got a client or two, for my $300, $400. If that doesn't happen, if you're like, I got nothing, then typically in that second month, I might say, all right, well, we'll change a couple things with your strategy, try to do a couple optimizations, maybe, have Greg come take a look at your website, make sure that there's no, changes there that need to be made to make it more effective, and then try it again that second month. And if after month 2, you're still like, I'm just not seeing results from this, then that's a situation where I would normally advise a client, look, in this case, Google Ads probably isn't going to be a fit for you, at least not until something more significant changes. And that could just mean that in your area, it's just Google Ads is super competitive, it doesn't work. It could mean that there's something about your practice, like maybe if you're charging self-pay rates and everybody else, accepts insurance, maybe that's a harder thing to market. Or, if you're, like you're still getting your supervised hours and other people in your area are fully licensed, again, maybe you're having a hard time competing with that. So those are things where potentially you might need to make a change in your wider practice and then come back and try the ads again. But it's not a situation where you just got to commit to 6 months and then see what happens. I normally say, $300 to $400 for a couple months. And then at that point, it'll either be working, or you will have gained the knowledge that this is not the way that I need to market, and then I need to invest more in SEO or word of mouth or something else.
Sure. And I hear you just sort of talking about adjusting things behind the scenes, and try and optimizing. And I say to just a lot of, not a lot, who am I kidding? I say to everybody, like, do not try to do your own Google ads. Right? Like, the fastest way to just throw away money is to try and do your own Google ads. So I'm curious, of course you have a company that helps therapists with Google ads and running their own Google ads, but just in general, like, as people are beginning to dip that pinky toe into the waters, like, what should they be looking for when it comes to hiring someone to do their own Google ads? What are some of the warning signs, or some of the, okay, this person has my trust? Like, what should someone keep an eye out for?
Yeah. So I got multiple thoughts on this one. So I think I would first affirm that like trying to do Google ads on your own is very, very unlikely to be successful. So if you're going to try to like make changes, make upgrades, the place to do that is on the website or in the other aspects of your business. Like, be like, let me try to offer a free consultation, see if that works. Let me try to throw a photo of myself or record a little video, put that on my site, see if that works. But within Google ads itself, the problem is that, again, Google is not your friend, and they've set it up where they have a lot of things that appear to be very beginner friendly, or they have recommendations, and those are just things that give Google more control, more money. And I mean, maybe there's certain industries where Google's recommendations work just fine, but for something like therapy, where it's so specific, it's so individualized, it's so like there's so much expertise that goes into it, Google just has no idea like how to how to with their more automated recommendations. Those just are going to end up with you paying for traffic that's way too expensive, paying for traffic that's not relevant. Like, if somebody just searches for the word depression in Google, that person is probably not going to sign up for therapy, because there's a million reasons why somebody would search for that, and there's no clear indication that they actually want your service. So having Google do it for you doesn't really work. Hiring a professional, that's the way to go. The thing that you want to be aware of, though, is that it's not like therapy where you got to have a license, you got to go to school. Like, just anybody can say, well, yeah, I'm a Google ads expert, and you should trust me. And so I think what you want to do is you want to look for a couple of components of sort of trustworthiness and expertise. I think one thing to look for that's pretty important is in regards to like the pricing and the contracts. Because your pricing should be transparent. Like, there shouldn't be, I mean, there can be extra fees for extra services. If you say, hey, I want to add a new thing, they might charge you more for that. But it shouldn't feel like, oh, I thought I was paying X and now I'm paying Y, and I have no idea why that happened. Also, anybody that's using a hard sell, there's one particular company that does advertising for therapists, and they are notorious for getting you on the phone saying, well, the price is X, but if you sign up today, we can give you a big discount, but it has to be today. You got to sign up. Give me your credit card. Go, go, go. Anybody that does anything that makes you feel kind of icky, that person is not ethical. They're not going to operate according to best practices. You don't want to work with them. Also, long-term contracts are not a thing that I think is appropriate with Google Ads. Like, for something like SEO, there's a little bit more room for that, because SEO does take at least a few months before you start to see results. But again, with your Google ads, you should know within a month, maybe two. And my philosophy is, if you're going to pay me to keep working on your, if I'm providing value for you, then you should be happy to keep paying me. And so there's no reason why I need to lock you into a year-long contract or something like that. And somebody that is trying to do that is somebody that doesn't have the confidence that they're going to be able to continue giving you value over that year. So I would say, transparent pricing, no long-term contracts, no hard sells or weird stuff. And then in terms of expertise, I think that I would want them to be able to explain to you what their approach is, in language that, like, where you can understand what they're going to do and how that's going to be useful for you. And I think that sometimes people will sort of just spew a bunch of stuff at you and hope that you don't understand and go away. But it's kind of like a therapist is like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna, I'm gonna use CBT and psychodynamic, and we're gonna mindfully, like, if I'm just throwing buzzwords at you, like any good therapist, you'd be able to stop and be like, hold on, when you say you're going to use CBT, what does that mean, and how would that specifically help me? And you should be able to do the same thing where if somebody's like, oh yeah, like we're going to set up, like conversion tracking, or we're going to use, like day partying. Like, okay, well, what is that? Why is that helpful for me? How are we going to know if it works? Somebody that's able to explain those things to you is going to be able to show expertise, and somebody who just waves you away or says, oh, trust us, or throws buzzwords at you, again, that person probably doesn't know what they're doing. The last thing that I would say is that you should know who you're working with. Like if you hire me, then you get me. I'm the one that's working on your ads. If you hire Greg, you get Greg. But a lot of the agencies that are out there, they might have one person who you talk to who's the salesperson, and maybe that's a person that has genuine expertise, and then they pass you off to some person that got hired 2 months ago that doesn't know anything. And that's a situation where you're not going to get good results. So you should be able to be like, I want to talk to the actual person who's going to be running this for me, and I want to be able to verify with that person that they know what they're doing, and they're going to be responsive for me.
Yeah, that last point really, speaks to me, because it happens so often, is the handoff,
Mm-hmm.
right? You talk to the expert, and then you get the B team working on your account, or you talk to somebody who clearly does know how to speak to therapists, but that's the sales guy, and then you wind up working with someone who has no experience, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just, I've, in addition to, I've been working with therapists for almost 20 years doing marketing and web design, and I also sometimes work with other clients, and there's just such a gigantic difference between the unique knowledge set that's needed to run a successful marketing or Google Ads campaign for a therapist, as opposed to, and I'm not saying this in any way negative about these other industries, but like a plumber, or a contractor, or any even other service industries, like the needs of therapists, because it's people's emotions, it's feelings, it's mental health. Like, it's so different, and it's such a nuanced art.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, like, just on top of all of that, it's like making sure that the people, not only the agency, but the people doing the work, speak therapist
Mm-hmm.
and speak client, and have that emotional intelligence and that awareness of how of the responsibility, in many ways, that comes from running a Google Ads campaign for people who are vulnerable, and
Mm-hmm.
in need of this critical help to improve their lives. So that's sort of, that occurred to me too, as you're talking about the agency thing, just from having worked with many a bait and switch agency over the years. So
Yeah, no, that's a great point also. Like, I mean, again, therapy is a very, very specific thing. And a lot of the strategies and approaches that would work for therapy, or that would work for a plumber, aren't going to work for therapy. In some cases, they're even like illegal or unethical. Like,
sure.
it's like, oh, like let's use a list of your existing clients and use that in our marketing. Well, like that's going to send me to federal prison. Like, let's not do that, right? So I think finding somebody who, ideally has expertise in the world of therapy at minimum, is really willing to listen and learn, and not just apply the cookie cutter approach, is really essential. But yeah, ideally you find somebody who specializes in this world, and who's able to to
Yeah.
understand from the get-go the specific nuances.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last thing I want to touch on, and thank you, Dana. This has been wonderful. I appreciate your adding just so much value, and so much of your sharing so much of your passion and your knowledge with everybody watching. And at one point you had mentioned, so, and it's this weird thing. You would think like, oh, if I double my Google Ads budget, I double
Mhm.
the amount of new clients I get, and that just doesn't happen. I remember I was working with a mental health company in San Francisco, and we had a very, very healthy budget. Like, we were operating at like $3,500, $4,000 a month for years, and then we had a whole bunch of new clinicians came on. So we're like, okay, let's just try an experiment, knowing that it might not work. And for a month, we just doubled. We're just like, we put it in, and maybe we got, not double, like a fraction of double, whatever the numbers were, they don't matter.
Mhm.
But the point is, right, there is this certain point where you're going to reach your max budget,
Mhm.
and that's kind of where you're going to cap out. So then this other thing, and this is not a conversation about search engine optimization, but where is that sort of, when does that tipping point happen, right? What are the limits of Google Ads, and like when should you really start focusing on search engine optimization, not necessarily to replace the leads coming in from Google Ads, but as a
Mhm.
complement to continue scaling your practice? I guess that would be my
Mhm.
sort of my final question for our conversation.
Yeah, for sure. No, like I think it's really critical to be thinking. I mean, I'm obviously a big fan of Google Ads. I think it's a really powerful tool, but it's one tool in the toolbox, and it has its limitations. As you mentioned, you can run into a situation where you're like there's just not additional traffic for the areas that you're trying to search for, or that additional traffic is really expensive because BetterHelp or whoever is buying up that traffic, and so you got to fight them for it, and that's going to throw your profit margin out the window, and so you're going to reach limits of scale. And there's other issues also, right? Like you obviously are continuing to pay per click, and so that's a drag on your earnings. Google controls, they control the game, and so you're at risk of, like, if everything you do is dependent on your Google Ads, if Google one day wakes up and decides to just suspend your account or change their rules or charge everybody triple, then your whole business is controlled by this one thing. That's not a good thing. And so having that diversification is really, really critical. And so honestly, normally what I recommend is that people start thinking about SEO kind of as soon as they can afford it. Especially because it does take at least a few months before you're going to start to see those gains from those SEOs. So it's kind of like you got to start planting those seeds before you need the harvest. And so typically, if you've got the budget available to invest in SEO, even just as a starting point, even just to start getting some of that low hanging fruit, I would try to consider it. And definitely, if you need a little bit more clarity from there, I would definitely say, at least 90 days before you think you're going to need organic search traffic, before you think you're going to bring on that new therapist or open that new clinic or whatever else it is, at least 90 days, I would start the process of building up your SEO, so that it has the time to actually have effect.
Awesome. And that, yeah, just one other thing. So many thoughts pop into my mind as you're talking. I'm trying to not share everything, but you mentioned just sort of the rise of cost because of these, the better help and the talk space. And it's just amazing how much cost per click, cost per lead, everything has gone up, especially
Mhm.
since the pandemic and since the rise of these Silicon Valley backed conglomerate corporations that are now buying up so much of the inventory for searches that used to go to solo practitioners and
Mhm.
to small group practices. It becomes more and more unattainable and more difficult to do it on your own, just as another
Mhm.
reason to maximize the knowledge and the expertise of people who live in this world of Google Ads rather than the DIY approaches, because there is just so much more competition every year than there ever has been before, especially with everybody online now. And you
Mhm.
joked in the beginning, no one uses business cards anymore, and nobody does that. And a funny sort of story to end on, like, I actually have a few clients who do still do that traditional approach. And I have one woman, she's out in Jersey City, and she's pretty much exclusively filled her caseload by going to fairs and giving out squeezy balls with her
Mhm.
logo and her URL on it, because no one's doing it anymore.
Mhm.
So it's almost like for years it was like, don't even bother doing it because everybody's doing it. Then everybody got all excited about Google Ads and websites, and they forgot about the traditional stuff. So I'm just it's the circle is complete, that once again that's actually becoming something that therapists should consider, not to not do websites and
Mhm.
Google Ads, right? But just something else for people to think about. Anyway,
Yeah.
that's my
No, I'm a big fan of like innovation and thinking through, like, well, where are my clients going to be, and how can I reach them, and how can I provide value to them? Whether it's I'm going to give them a squeezy ball, whether it's like I work with a lot of kids, so I'm going to go do a talk on the PTA, for the local PTA about bullying, like whatever, I'm gonna go see if I can get interviewed by the local newspaper, like anything where you're able to go out into the community, give value to your target audience. That's a great option. And in some ways, because as you mentioned, a lot of people aren't doing it, there's a lot of opportunity there. The difficulty is that you got to be the one that does it. Like, Greg is not going to sit at a table and sell your squeezy balls for you. And so I think online marketing has the benefit that it's very scalable, it's very delegatable. But I do encourage people to think about, especially as they've done the work to identify what is my ideal client, what is my unique thing that I can offer. I do encourage therapists to also think of ways to reach out in their community locally and try to find clients that way also.
Awesome. Well, Daniel, thank you again so much. Of course, if anybody wants to book a free consult with Daniel or reach out to him, I'm gonna put all the information below on how you can reach out. You can learn more, marketingfortherapists.org. And yeah, unless you have any last words of wisdom, I think you've shared so much. And like I said, thank you from the bottom of my heart for making space in your busy day to do this interview, to help some people, and for everything that you do to help fill caseloads and make the world a better place. Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate you.
Yeah, Greg, it was real pleasure to be here. I appreciate the opportunity, and thanks so much for having me.
All right. Enjoy your day, everybody. Thanks for watching.